If you are a planner for forestry or other natural resource industries in British Columbia, this video is for you. Fishers are a red-listed carnivore in central BC, and they are blue-listed in northeastern BC. Fisher decline is largely associated with habitat loss, and broad-scale cutting of primary forests is the biggest human threat to fisher habitat. To address this, the BC Fisher team has developed tools and guidance to help forestry planners include fisher habitat measures in the planning process. In the big picture, we need to adjust the rate of cutting at the landscape scale to ensure enough intact fisher habitat persists to support the fisher population. But we also need to retain important habitat features at the finer stand scale so that in the future, harvested areas will have some of those key features that fishers need.
In this video, we describe how to use the Fisher Habitat Retention Tool. This spatial tool provides block-level guidance for timber harvest plans proceeding in fisher habitat, which overlaps most of BC's timber harvesting land base.
In the province of BC, fishers are mostly in the low elevation forests, so anywhere where it's kind of boreal spruce, subboreal spruce, interior Douglas fir, subboreal pine spruce, and montane spruce forests, and a little bit of ICH forests. So anywhere within that range, fishers do occur.
The retention tool uses science-based, fisher-specific habitat criteria in conjunction with the Provincial Vegetation Cover Database, or VRI, to spatially assess how much fisher habitat should be retained in a proposed cut block.
So the Fisher Habitat Retention Tool identifies three real primary fisher habitats to retain within blocks. The first is denning habitat, and that's where the females will rear their kits. The next are resting sites in rust brooms. Those are key features that fishers need. And then the third is coarse-wooded debris resting sites. So when it's below -10, fishers need these coarse-wooded debris sites under snow to survive these cold temperatures.
The tool produces two important kinds of advice for licensees. One is actual counts of critical habitat features that should be retained within or around a cut block. And the other is areas to avoid harvesting because it would severely impact or eliminate the ability of the larger landscape to support a fisher now and in the future. So the retention tool gives advice for harvest planning at the block scale, but licensees should also plan for larger tracts of intact mature forest at a broad scale across their tenures to ensure fisher populations can persist. Now let's get into how to run the tool.
The tool can be downloaded from the BC Fisher Habitat webpage, and it's available for everywhere in BC where fishers would occur. So the first step is to download the data packages, which includes not only the spatial data, but also all the other field guides and interpretive guides that'll help licensees use the information to plan their cut blocks better to retain fisher habitat.
Instructions for running the tool are also available in PDF format on our website under the Habitat Tools drop-down menu for your region.
Once you've downloaded the Fisher Habitat Toolbox, you'll see a folder in the compressed file with the name of your region followed by an underscore and FGT. This is the Fisher Habitat Retention Tool, and in order to run it, you need to copy it to a root directory that your ArcGIS system can access. Next, you need to have a shapefile or feature class for your proposed cut blocks. This is the input for the tool, and it needs to have 3 fields in the attribute table that identify a reference name for each cut block with no spaces, the cutting permit for each cut block, and the forest license under which the cutting permit was issued. If you don't have that info, you can put in dummy values, but the tool will not run without these 3 attributes filled in. Your input file can include as many cut blocks as you want. Now we'll go through an example.
Navigate to the directory in which the FGT tool was stored. Open your region-specific FGT folder, in this case caribou_FGT. Go down to the Fisher Guidance Toolbox, open it, and double-click on Tool. This will open the tool window, which has information that you need to fill in. The window has a detailed help menu that will guide you through the process of conducting the analysis on your own. The first thing you need to supply is your spatial data of your proposed cut blocks. In this case, we're going to pick this file here called cut block example. We're going to add it. The block field is named block. The forest license field is labeled forest LIC. Cutting permit field is named cutting permit.
The next step is to identify the Fisher habitat feature class that the tool will use in the analysis. When the tool is opened, it will automatically select the feature class associated with a specified natural resource region, so you should not have to change this value. The next few steps allow you to specify what type of output you want from the tool and where it should be stored. The tool automatically selects 2_outputs from the retention data package as the default folder. Other folders can be selected, but the tool will run most efficiently if outputs are directed to this folder. Next, decide if you want an 11 by 17 inch georeferenced PDF map for fieldwork. This map is designed specifically for field crews while on the ground in the proposed cut block. Finally, there is also an option to produce JPEG images
in case you would like to embed the output in a report or something.
The next step is to press OK and the tool will run. It will take about 1 minute per block within the shapefile. When it is completed, you will see a script and it will print the details of the initial analysis. Don't worry, all of this information is produced in the summary reports, but if you want a text version of the output, it is available here.
Now let's look at the output from the Fisher Habitat Retention tool. Each run of the tool produces 2 folders and a zip file within the output folder. Both folders are named with the prefix FGT and the date and time of the run. The first folder has a geodatabase with all the outputs of the analysis, in case you want to take a closer look. The second folder contains the user-friendly version of the results for each cut block in our input file. The zip file contains all the results so you can share them easily if needed. In the results folder, we have a subfolder for each of our original cut blocks. These subfolders are named with the block info from our input file with the extension FGT at the end. If we open a block subfolder, the first group of files comprise the shapefile, that is the product of overlaying our cut block shape on the VRI and Fisher habitat data. Next is the layer file that, when opened in our map, shows harvest impact warnings for the cut block, if any. The last few files are the user-friendly PDFs and optional JPEGs. These will probably be the most useful files for planning and laying out blocks, so let's go over them in a little more detail. The detailed report, field map, and summary report each contain the retention targets and any harvest impact warnings, just presented in different formats depending on how you want to use them. The detailed report describes in paragraph form the Fisher habitat retention targets for the block. The header section shows the block information from our input spatial file. The next section identifies any harvest impact warnings associated with the proposed block. These warnings occur when exceptionally good Fisher habitat that is rare on the surrounding landscape falls within the block boundaries. These are great areas for retention, or WTRAs. The next section contains actual counts of the retention targets for each specific Fisher habitat feature. These are the numbers of features to keep within the cut block or associated reserves. Contingency targets are also given, so if sufficient trees meeting the original target criteria are not present, the contingency value is the number of next best trees to retain to hopefully become Fisher habitat in the future.
If a block does not have enough features that meet the original retention target criteria, only then should the contingency targets be used.
The first target in the detailed report is for denning habitat. This is the number and type of trees to keep for Fisher reproduction. The next retention target is for branch or broom resting, followed by trees to retain for cavity resting. The last target is for cold weather resting sites under large pieces of coarse woody debris. Note that this target includes the number of individual coarse woody debris pieces to retain, as well as the number of coarse woody debris piles that should be created within the cut block. Next is the field map, which is a georeferenced PDF. This is a super handy tool for field crews to refer to as they survey or lay out the block. Each map shows spatially in red or yellow where harvest impact warnings occur within the block. In this example, a large portion of the block has a yellow harvest impact warning. This probably means that the surrounding landscape has a low density of critical fisher habitat features, possibly from previous logging. As we mentioned earlier, overlaying retention areas, or WTRAs, on harvest impact warnings is a great way to deal with warnings for two reasons. First, it will protect the highest quality fisher habitat in the block, and second, it will significantly decrease the overall retention targets for the rest of the block. Accordingly, harvesting warning areas has two consequences. One, it will severely reduce or eliminate the functional capacity of the broader landscape to support fishers. And two, it will significantly increase the retention targets for any future cut blocks in the surrounding area. The retention targets and contingencies for each fisher habitat feature are also included on the field map along the left side. Finally, the summary report provides a shortened tabular version of the harvest impact warnings, retention targets, and contingencies for the proposed block. It shows all the same information, just in a more condensed format with a small map. After you've run the tool and see what the outputs look like, we recommend adjusting block boundaries and/or retention areas to address any warnings, then running the tool again. Using the tool with an iterative approach like this is the best way to meet fisher habitat objectives, even before field crews visit the block.
Incorporating the outputs from the fisher habitat retention tool into cut block planning is actually really straightforward. There's 3 summary reports that provide exactly how many trees to retain of different types within the block or in surrounding reserves. Harvest impact warning areas are really one of the key parts of the tool. It helps licensees figure out where to not go.
Here are some key tips for implementing the guidance from the fisher habitat retention tool.
Overlay WTRAs on harvest impact warning areas and run the tool again to significantly decrease the overall retention targets for the block.
So one of the easiest ways to use the retention data is to make sure your wildlife tree patches or your WTRAs include as many habitat features that are identified in the outputs from the analysis. If you can keep all those trees within your WTRAs, it's really going to help with the planning of the block and probably the execution as well.
Wherever possible, group the retention features into WTRAs or other reserves to greatly improve their wind firmness and to improve the likelihood that fishers might come back to use that area in the near future.
One of the comments we often get about our guidance to retain spruce trees is that spruce trees blow down, which is true. If you identify spruce trees with rust brooms within your block, probably the best guidance is to retain those within your WTRAs, which are going to be much more wind firm. If they're spread throughout the block, do some small retention around so that it increases the wind firmness. Some will survive, and if they fall down, that's still great fisher habitat anyways.
With these handy tools, we hope that incorporating fisher habitat guidance into your block planning will be straightforward.
So please remember, licensees need to do more for fishers than just hit the targets produced by the fisher habitat retention tool. Larger tracts of intact mature forest need to be retained at broader scales for fishers to survive and reproduce in your tenures. This is why landscape level planning is essential to ensure sufficient habitat will always be there to support a fisher population.
If we want to recover fishers, we need to start planning forest management that keeps fisher habitat on the landscape.
Thank you for watching this video. For more information, including other fisher habitat training resources and videos, please visit our website at bcfisherhabitat.ca.